Hello and welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse, the podcast all about animated features not made by Disney. I'm your host, Octaviano, and today we're talking about an animated feature from about a decade ago. It's a little less than that, I know, but it's another animated feature that, like the last two, was at the Oscars. It was nominated for Best Animated Film and lost to what I think was honestly the weakest choice that year. Oh well, it lost. It was still nominated, so that's good in my book. I am, of course, talking about the animated feature ParaNorman, which comes from Laika Studios. If you're not familiar with that, they're the people who made Coraline. After this, they would make Box Trolls, Kubo and the Two Strings, and Missing Link. Now, ParaNorman, like the last two movies, is a lot more horror-based. It is a movie that features zombies, witches, all kinds of manners of spooky things, and yeah, it's just another really solid movie on this list. It's one that I really enjoyed. It's one that I think a lot more people need to see, and that realistically can be summed up with anything from Laika. Like, I feel most people probably saw Coraline, and even then that one wasn't as popular as some other movies, and then after that everyone's kind of been ignoring the studio. Not to a point that they haven't had any successful movies, but to a point that you don't see them being talked about as much as some of the big names like Pixar or DreamWorks, which is a shame because realistically, this is a solid company. When it comes to their movies, each one has been good to great. The animation is always top notch, especially in this one, and I'll get more into that in a bit. And it's just an overall, just really satisfying studio to witness whenever it comes to any of their works. And I'm hoping that they're still doing movies. I know in recent years I've been hearing some troubles with them, but I'm hoping that's just a bunch of rumors and not the truth, because it would be really sad to see Laika go down, because realistically they are one of the best studios out there working right now, animated or not. So yeah, they have that going for them. Just wanted to get that out of the way. Now, ParaNorman, what's it about? Well, ParaNorman is an animated feature about a little boy named Norman who has these powers. Specifically, he can talk to the dead. So it's kind of like that movie, The Sixth Sense. Only if you would imagine if the main character got over his powers and just accepted it. Because that's one of the things that I do like about this movie, is that right from the start, Norman is already used to his powers as, like, you know, this guy who talks to the dead. He sees the dead. He's very friendly with dead people, dead animals, whoever. Like, he pretty much acknowledges, like, yes, it is weird. He knows that a lot of people mock him for it, but for the most part, he has just accepted it. He's not doing the whole thing where he's like, oh, I'm trying to keep this a secret. He's like, look, this is what I'm doing. You guys are not believing me, but it's the truth, and I'm not going to be a jerk to the people that actually do see me, the dead people, just to please you guys. Like, if I see my grandma right there, I'm going to talk to my grandma. I'm not going to pretend that I don't see her. That's kind of his character, and it's really cute. It's really charming. It's well done. I like how in the beginning you do see like this little transition from like he's just talking to a bunch of people, talking to animals, and no one's really seeing it. You're not even seeing it yourself, so you're kind of like, what's he doing? And then the movie just kind of turns around, like pretty much like he's walking by like a post or something, and you start saying like, oh, this is what he's seeing. It's a really neat scene. But yeah, so he's a kid who talks to the dead, and along the way people make fun of him. He meets this little chubby kid who befriends him. His name is Neil, and pretty much Neil is like, look, I don't care if, you know, I can't see it. I believe you. I trust you. And it's just a really cute thing. Like, it's not something that you get with a lot of these movies, because normally you would have like the Neil character also being kind of against them, but maybe trying to, you know, meet him halfway, or at the very least trying to pretend that he, you know, sees it too. But no, in this, like, he fully acknowledges, like, look, I don't see it, but I know that you do, because you say you do, so I'm not gonna act like you're lying. And sorry if you're hearing a lot of loud noises. That kind of stuff is out of my control right now. I'm hoping it's not too distracting, but anyway, so you got Norman, his new friend, and it's pretty much set in this town, like in Massachusetts. It's like the whole Salem witch trials, because like this whole town is pretty much celebrating like the whole, like, this the time that where we actually caught a witch. We're really emphasizing like all the witch hangings and all the stuff that we did. We've marketed it, we've sold it, we have a statue dedicated to it. It's all just this really cute stuff that, clearly it shows that, yeah, we've pretty much gone full capitalist on this idea that we hunted down witches, which I'd imagine is probably true to some places. I've never been around that area, but considering that the Salem witch trials were a real thing, it would not surprise me, and given how this country is. But, yeah, so you got that in the movie. You pretty much have this whole thing where there's an uncle that Norman has who also has the same power, but he's pretty much an outcast. So this is kind of like, hey, look, Norman, please don't be this weird because your uncle ended up this way. Like the mother seems sympathetic towards it, but the father is like clearly worried that that's where he's going to end up. But surprise, it turns out that of course it's true. The uncle is pretty much in charge of like this whole thing where he's supposed to read a book to the witch every year just to keep the witch asleep, because if he doesn't, the witch will come back and will start bringing out her curse on the town. But of course that there ends up being surprises in there. Norman tries, because he's like the next in line to do this, tries doing it. He gets help from Neil, a local bully called Alvin, eventually his sister, and Neil's brother ends up going along with it, and it ends up being this big horror fest. Like, pretty much zombies start rising from the grave, the witch is clearly striking at various spots, the townspeople are freaking out to the point that they're kind of becoming monsters on their own, not literally, but like in terms of figuratively. And yeah, it ends up playing to the movie's message, which is all about not judging those for who they are, pretty much actually talking to people and understanding where they're coming from before you turn them into freaks, understanding what you're scared of, and the movie does that really well, because like as the movie goes along, you start realizing like, wait a second, the zombies aren't exactly the monsters in this. Like, they're not harming people, and the people are the ones that are being more destructive, and that's because it is very much a story of understanding like, hey, you don't just go after someone based on your first thought on them. You're really supposed to pretty much like the whole ask questions instead of shooting first. That's kind of what it is. And ParaNorman really does that well. Like, the message just comes out really well. It's very emotional. Multiple moments in this movie where I started to tear up because they do handle the message really well. I mean, I saw this back when it first came out. I saw it multiple times because I really liked it. And watching it again this time still holds up really well. I mean, with this one compared to other movies where I haven't watched it in years, it's a lot less of a gap because I have watched it multiple times over the years. I mean, I would say this is probably my first time watching it all the way through in maybe 3 years max, so it's not like it's going to be that much of a difference in terms of how I saw it, but just to keep that out there. But yeah, it's just a really solid movie. The animation is great. Leica is really solid at this stuff. I know that this movie was promoted as like the first movie to use like full color 3D printers to create like the models or the facial expressions or something like that, or maybe it was the entirety of it. But either way, you can see it's all really nice stuff. And the great thing about Leica is that if you stay through the credits on any other movies, you'll always see a little bit of how they create this stuff. Not all of it, but you get a sense of like how they create the worlds that they make. And this is no exception. It's just a really solid world. Like, the animation is very spooky at times. The designs on the people is great. It's very stylized, but very fun. The zombies, fun to look at. I mean, it is some of the more uniquely designed zombies I've ever seen in animation, and it's really great because they deliver in terms of like, okay, these are creepy looking creatures, but then once you have to soften them up to realize like, hey, look, they're not that bad, they do deliver on that front. And I do like how they slowly build up on that. Like, they right out the gate, when you first see the zombies, you kind of realize like, wait a second, they're not exactly being evil, but of course with fear taking over, the characters automatically assume like, hey, they're gonna attack us. And yeah, you actually get that with the movie where the characters are running from the zombies, and when it comes to seeing them reveal like, hey, look, we're not actually bad people, you start to sympathize with them real quick. You realize like, hey, wait a second, they're not even evil, they're just people who are in this unfortunate state. Like, there's a really great scene where you see them actually come into contact with the town, and they're like looking all around, seeing how all the things like how they've marketed the witch stuff, TVs and stuff like that, and you actually see like them reacting to some TV shows, and it's hilarious because it's like, yeah, of course these people would be freaked out by that. I mean, these people were from a more conservative time, so obviously, yeah, they would be freaking out at all the different things that we have now, whether it's phones, the weird programs we watch, everything. So yeah, it's just a really funny scene, and the movie doesn't, shy away from that. It acknowledges like, hey, look, things are going to be different for these people. But it again plays all into the main theme of the movie, which is not letting fear control you, understanding that just because something is different doesn't mean it's bad, understanding that just because you see something a certain way doesn't mean that that's what it is. You should really reach out and understand what exactly you're talking about. I mean, even the directors of this, I believe specifically, I think it was like Chris Butler, because it's two directors. I think it was Chris Butler who mentioned that, because, and this is a twist on the movie, but it's not a major twist, so I don't know. Let's just say that there's spoilers in this. Honestly, I try to avoid spoiling too much on these things, but every now and then I have to talk about it. And honestly, if you're watching this, I would assume that you either go out and watch it afterwards, based on my recommendation, or have already seen it. If you haven't watched it, definitely go watch it. Watch it before even finishing this and continuing this, and then continuing this after you're done. But if you still want to continue this and watch it afterwards, perfectly understandable. A movie is not ruined by spoilers, honestly. If a movie is that good, you'll enjoy it regardless if you know the twist. I mean, I've seen that with a lot of classic movies. I knew the twist on Citizen Kane, Bicycle Thief, just a lot of movies. I mean, even something like, if you're going with more recent, like Wreck-It Ralph, I kind of already knew the twist going into the movie, because, of course, there's always people who post this stuff up when a movie, starts getting reviews or whatever, but that's not the point. The point is that at the end of the movie, we find out that one of the characters, specifically Neil's older brother, is gay. It's not a very big twist. It's just something a little, it's kind of like a punchline, really, because it's just supposed to be like, hey, look, the sister's been hitting on him throughout the entire movie. Why has he not noticed? And throughout most of it, we're just assuming, oh, it's because he's a meathead, he's a dumbass. But then it turns out, surprise, it's that he's not really into her. He's just gay and, never really caught on to what she was doing. So in a way, it was Tim being an idiot. But still, like the director basically mentioned, the reason why they had that in is because they really want to emphasize, like, hey, look, don't judge someone based on how they look like and what you assume out of them. So clearly, even something like that, like, we gotta stick to our guns and just be like, hey, look, let's just say the meathead isn't just a meathead. There is a reason why he's not attracted to the sister. Surprise, he's gay. It's, like I said, it's not something that's big. I imagine most people wouldn't be bothered by it. It's a cute little joke. It's one of the rare things where gay being the punchline isn't an insult. But then again, I don't know if maybe some people consider it an insult. I've never heard anyone say that it's offensive in this movie, and I hope it's not. But if it is, I'm more than willing to listen to those arguments. But I feel it's done fine. Which again, just shows you how dedicated they were to this message. They weren't trying to shy away from it, even when they could have. Because realistically, you didn't need that information, but the fact that they decided to just go in on it and explain it anyways is fine, and the movie does it just fine. It doesn't stop the story. It's just something that we realized right at the end of the movie, and it's just a good thing. So yeah, ParaNorman is just a really excellent movie. I would honestly argue it's one of the best animated movies of the last decade, just because of how well it's animated, the story, the theme, everything about it is just so well done. And it's really something where you can tell that this was not done by a committee, because there's a lot of scenes in there that do go all in on the scares. Like, of course, there's the comedy to kind of alleviate this stuff, and it's not like it goes full on adult. Like, it's not something that you're going to see a lot of blood in. It's really well implemented on the scares. It's just a movie that is honestly near perfect. Everything about it just feels perfect. Obviously, with any movie, there's going to be flaws, but if you were to ask me, I would either gloss over most of them or wouldn't even notice it. Honestly, that this movie was nominated for an animated feature award, I totally get. That it lost, I could kind of get too, because realistically, if you look at the Oscars, almost any year, if there's a Pixar or a Disney movie, those are going to win. It's kind of disappointing, but most of the time, there are solid movies in their own right, so I can kind of give it a pass. I wish they would at least open up more to other studios, but I know that it's going to be hard because a lot of these people who are voting are often just, well, the animation is for kids, so there's more work to be done on that front, just because more people should take this seriously as something that's they're actual movies. They're not just things that you use to shut your kids up for like 90 minutes, which unfortunately too many voters still see it as. That being said, of all the years for this to lose, I do feel a little pissed that it lost to what I would honestly say is the worst movie to ever win a Best Animated Feature award, that being Brave. And I don't want to turn this into a whole ParaNorman versus Brave thing, because realistically, any movie that would have won that year would have been better than Brave. I mean, you had this movie, The Pirates, which was an Aardman stop-motion movie, one that I should probably do at some point. Frankenweenie, a Disney animated movie, so why didn't that win? Or Wreck-It Ralph, another Disney animated movie, and this one from the main Disney Animation Studios. That one definitely should have won over Brave. So, like, if it was any of those movies, I would have been more fine with it, even though I do think ParaNorman is the best one of the bunch, but that it's Brave is just so... why? That was such a disappointing win. It's like, you have this beautiful movie that is honestly trying to teach people a lesson in terms of, not really diversity, but pretty much like in different people. Like, I don't want to full on say diversity because these are all still white characters, but it at least is saying like, hey, look, just because someone is different doesn't mean they're bad, versus Brave, which is just, be good to your mother or whatever. And look, again, I don't want to go on a whole versus route. Honestly, even if you don't like a certain filmmaker's movie, if you're in this field, you should at least respect, the work that goes into it. But it is still one thing where it's like, look, personal opinion in there, that movie was not good, and yeah, there was not much to it. So if that was really going to be the one to win, why couldn't you have, I don't know, like if this one had to lose, why couldn't it have lost to something else that at least would have said like, hey, look, it's not as good as this, but you know what, I can respect what it is. So there you go. Brave, it's a messy movie, but again, I've been talking about that enough. Going back to ParaNorman, it's just this beautiful movie. The animation is great, and I know I'm repeating that a lot, but I just really want to emphasize that, yeah, the motion in this is just really good. At times, it looks like an actual, like a live-action horror movie. And that's because you can tell that these people making it really love the classics. There's some modern stuff in there. Like, I would definitely say, like, any of the times that you see, like, the clouds with the witch and everything, that's probably a bit more like a modern horror movie. But in terms of, like, the zombie stuff, that feels like a classic Romero movie. And I know that they even mentioned, like, the reason why they went with zombies was because if you look at zombie movies, especially the good ones, they always had some social satire in them. So, obviously, it made sense. Like, hey, look, if we're gonna do that, let's go the extra mile and just be like, hey, look, maybe we shouldn't even be attacking these guys. Maybe they're not even here to be evil. Which, that's an interesting approach to it. It's definitely one of the more unique approaches to zombies I've seen ever, pretty much. I mean, most of the time, even if they're good zombies, they still emphasize on like, oh, look, they're looking for brains, they're looking to eat someone. So it is nice to see, like, look, these guys are the undead, but the curse isn't that they're gonna attack you. The curse is that you're gonna attack them because they've been, doing bad stuff. But in the meantime, the witch is pretty much, because of course she sees everyone as evil, she is gonna try to terrorize the town as well. We never get a full idea of what she would have done if the people had just killed the zombies, but we can assume that she would probably still be around, maybe just messing with people in certain ways, just to be like, hey, look, you're just as bad as these people, so you deserve to be punished. And, the movie even addresses this, like, hey, look, the witch, you were originally a victim, but now you're kind of the monster that you said that they were to you. So I don't know, it's just really solid stuff. If I'm repeating stuff, I it's not because I don't know what to say. It's just I just can't stop going from how much I love this movie. It is a really great movie, from a great studio, honestly. I hope to one day do all the Leica movies, which there's not many as of this point, but I also do hope that we do get more Leica movies. If anything, between this and Wallace Gromit, just a lot of the other movies that have been nominated for the award, I'd argue that stop motion is probably the most consistent of all animation forms, and that's because, well, you know how long it takes when it comes to these things. They are very time consuming. Like, even the stuff that is done quickly is done slowly compared to other animated features. Like, you're not going to get a stop motion feature within 1 or 2 years. I applaud the people at Leica for sticking through it and always just going for it every single time. And they, this is just a really beautiful movie. Their best one, in my opinion. The scares are great. The animation is great. The colors, everything about it just pops. And I do get very emotional throughout a lot of the movie. I love the voice work in the movie where you go from Casey Affleck's dumb jock, Mitch, the brother of Neil. The two kids are great. I do like the bully character who I haven't really touched on, but he gets a lot of laughs. He's voiced by Christopher Mintz-Plasse, I believe it's his last name is. But he's the guy who was McLovin for Superbad. You got Anna Kendrick being this not really an airhead, but she is like the cheerleader sister of Norman, who's fed up with his stuff. And I do like that, even though she kind of fits into that cheerleader stereotype, a lot of the time you do realize that she's much more competent than you would expect these characters to be, because they could have easily made her a bimbo. And it's just funny that you see her being the horny one when it comes to her and the guy. Of course, you realize why that is, but still, it's just a funny change of pace. The parents are fun. Jeff Garlin as Norman's dad. I mean, it's pretty much like a very one-dimensional, like, look, he's just mad because his son is weird. But a lot of his lines are delivered really well. I mean, whether it's like the more emotional stuff, the funny stuff, it's just really enjoyable. So, he does it really well. John Goodman has a small part in this, and it's again another fun character, because you realize, like, okay, so here's the person that people or like the family is afraid of Norman growing up to be, and you kind of realize that, well, he is right about what he's doing, he's just weird about it, to the point that you kind of have to wonder if the problem isn't so much the ability or is it the person. Because Norman, like I said, he's pretty much fine with what he's doing as early as the movie starts. Like, he's fully accepted this is who he is, even though people judge him. So ignoring what happened in the movie, I would kind of doubt that he would end up being like the town weirdo. Like, people would still probably see him as weird, but I would imagine he would still be a lot more social. But of course the movie does kind of go into that and play off of it, because of course once we get the witch, it is supposed to be like a contrast of like, hey, look, here's someone who couldn't accept who they were versus someone who did. Granted, you do have to understand the circumstances on it, because of course they were judging the witch on her being a witch, and to the point that they were gonna kill her. They do end up killing her for doing that. So it does address these things. Yeah, and I don't think I got much more to say other than just thank you for listening. This has been Octaviano Macias, host of I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, Psycam Films. Or if you want to do some more than that, do consider supporting me on Patreon at www.patreon.com/psycams. That's SAICAMS. www.patreon.com/psycams. The more you support me, the more I can put out on these, the more I can do with these, the more I can improve on these. And I do plan on working on these. I do plan on giving some more milestones as we get closer to the end of the year, just to really show that I am dedicated to this. But yeah, thank you for listening. I hope to see you again next time.